Hi, this is Jonathan Rosenhead, a Jerusalem psychotherapist. This week's Torah and Psychology post of Pashas Vaeschanan is going to discuss universal ethical values. We can ask, what is ethics? So ethics are the guiding principles that determines behavior to be correct and appropriate and proper behavior. But this isn't determined by a single moral value or moral principle, but rather these are principles that help us to assess and evaluate situations, often when there's contradictory or conflicting or multiple options in terms of how to behave. And these are the principles, the ethical values that help us, that hopefully will determine that the end result will be behavior that is good and correct and proper. And Michael Josephson of the Josephson Institute of Ethics focuses on the importance of the universality of ethics, of ethical values. Because he says that often people will determine, it's very common that they will assess their behavior and what is correct, and they will decide what is correct or good behavior based on religious values or based on society or family background, in their environment, or different experiences, or just simple habits and norms. But he says that the problem with this, and the problem with these aspects that often determine our behavior, is that they are not universal. They don't stand the test of time, that's based on different generations, different people, different situations. These principles, which determines our behavior, will not help for the end result to always be the same ethical result and correct behavior. And he therefore suggests that it's important that there are universal ethical principles, and he suggests 6 ethical principles which he says are universal. And these are trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And he says that these 6 principles will therefore be able to, on a theoretical level, will make up the understanding of what are the guiding principles, and this will then be translated into action, which in the research is referred to as moral or ethical thought, which is then translated into moral, ethical action and behavior. And he says, and this is what he goes through, is to understand how we see that these guiding principles, which are therefore universal, will be able to determine how a ethical society can be built and can be put into action. And I'd like to argue against this, and certainly when he says that the religious principles are not sufficient enough to be universal. Because if we look at this week's Parsha, we have again, in Sefer Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu has the opportunity to prepare the Bnei Yisrael for going into Eretz Yisrael, and to give them the laws and the guidelines and the guidance which will be necessary for building a society which is healthy and functioning and ethical. And what do we read in this week's Parsha? We read the Aseret Dibros. And why is this important? Because the Aseret Dibros, as I would say, is the guiding universal principles that Michael Joseph is trying to allude to, and he's trying to suggest is important in order to create an ethical society. These are the ethical principles. And I know we could say that the Aseret Dibros were given to the Bnei Yisrael. These, on a halachic level, they are the mitzvahs that the Bnei Yisrael have to do. But as a guiding principle for the Bnei Yisrael and how to build an ethical society, this is the binding universal value. Because even if we look at the 6 principles that Michael Joseph suggests, there's a flaw in the sense that they are still based, or they are still subject to the individual personal decision, the subjective decision. They are still subject to the human decision making and the human condition of self-interest. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, in his book To Heal a Fractured World, suggests as well that there's this the human weakness, in a sense, the human selfishness and the self-interest and the focus on the individual, on their own life, is the flaw to ethics. Because at the end result, even if there are guiding principles of universal ethical principles, the end of the decision making is based on us, and it will still mean that what we think is correct and what we think is the right behavior and serves our self-interest will be the determining factor for what comes out and how our behavior and how we put ethics into action. So there is a flaw into suggesting that there are universal principles of trustworthiness and responsibility and respect, and these 6 principles that Michael Josephson suggests, because it's still subject to the human condition. But if we look at the Aseret Dibros, This is what ethics needs. Ethics needs something which is binding, universally binding, which will ensure that there will always be, that there is a level of integrity and responsibility that the person will always adhere to this binding factor of ethics. And this is the Aseret Dibros. And as we said, the Bnei Yisrael have to keep the Aseret Dibros on a halachic level of Torah mitzvahs, but then also, as we see, it's being given to them as the guideline for building an ethical society as they go into Eretz Yisrael. And then through Ola Goyim as well, if we keep these Aseret Dibros and we understand that we tap into the ethical values and we put this into action, it will be an example to the rest of the nations. It will be an example to the rest of the world. And through the ethical society that we build and create in Eretz Yisrael, it will have a knock-on effect and will be the example and the shining light for the rest of the world to be able to create an ethical society and to be able to create, as Jonathan Sachs says, the ethics of responsibility, which is our responsibility in order to heal a fractured world. Have a great Shabbos and keep well.